Hello to everyone, and welcome to another conversation. Today's conversation is one that I got to tell you, I have been struggling with in how to introduce this fine gentleman that we're going to be having a conversation with. Very, very briefly, Mudasir is unable to join me today. My name is Sai. Ever so briefly, I'm a business coach and a consultant with a focus on transformation. I love to partner with organizations and all members throughout the organization to help them calibrate their business models and their operating models to achieve the impact that they want to have in the world. I classify myself as a catalyst, if you will, and I've had the great fortune of working with the fine gentleman who you'll be meeting today. So let me just say a few sort of introductory comments. And this is, bear with me, if you will, because I'm going to start with a question that we normally get. And that question is, how do you choose your guests? Why do you choose your guests? And I got to tell you that the most fundamental barometer in terms of selecting a guest is I'll see someone, I'll read something, or Mudasir will do the same. And we get sort of a vital, visceral, primal sense of awe when we experience them in some capacity or something they've done. So what we like to do is take that experience and make an attempt to express it in the introduction as best as we can. And we're never perfect in expressing it. But I got to tell you, Steve is the first guest that I have struggled with to introduce, truly struggled with. And I dwelled on this. And I got to tell you, for weeks, I've dwelled on this. How do I introduce this fine gentleman? So let me first start with his brief bio. Now you know my struggle. Let me give you his brief bio and come back to my struggle. Steve is a very accomplished consultant and practitioner, focuses on high-risk, high-impact initiatives, truly to help organizations and people within organizations make a change, make a difference, get things done that they can't accomplish otherwise. So very much a catalyst as he operates. Additionally, and I love this about Steve, the center of his life is his family. And he is, and as you will meet him and be introduced to him, very much rooted in that. He likes to enhance the lives of everyone he touches, truly. And I have seen him do this from just simply walking into Starbucks to get a coffee together. I'll put it that way, to other experiences that I've witnessed this fine gentleman. And he always leaves clients better than he found them. So additionally, I have to mention, Steve is part of the core circle of folks that I've worked with over the years. Intimately worked with, along with Brad Barton, Mark Ferraro, and Steve likewise, amongst others. So saying all that, going back to my sort of dilemma to introduce this fine gentleman, I have to tell you, I absolutely love this man. Absolutely love this man. I consider him my brother, and you will hear me refer to him as my brother very openly. At the same time, he is commonly known within my circles and clients as well as very openly the sage commander. So he truly will speak to that topic in many ways. He embodies sageness, as you will experience, and hopefully you'll get a chance to opportunistically meet him in person someday. He is very much focused on taking whole and achieving victory. Now, the art of war is very much a part of his foundation, but there is more at his core. So I will leave that for him to talk about as we go through the conversation. I intentionally also use the word love, and I'm referring to Robert Sternberg's definition of love as he talks about it. I have the first characteristics. There's three characteristics. One is intimacy or connectedness. I have a very, very deep sense of connectedness to this man and awareness to this fine gentleman. And he has the same, I believe, with me. At the same time, we channel that awareness with our clients. So that makes a huge difference. And we commonly will say we love our clients. So a very, very key connectedness to our clients. The additional aspect, the second aspect is passion or drive. High energy, contributes, that's Steve. And we have that between us, and as well as we work with our clients from that same place. And the third characteristic is the decisions and the commitments that we make with each other, with our clients. We are faithful to those commitments. We are in partnership to make a positive impact in the world that we encounter. Hopefully he'll tell you about how we met, and I'm sure that will be a very, very key to some of the things that you'll hear us say. And now if I go again, full circle, why did I have so much difficulty? I dwelled on this. And what's the reason that Steve really resonates with me? And I hope I resonate with him in the same way. And I boiled it down to one quintessential thing about Steve. And this is what I've come to. And he can disagree with me once he gets here. So I realize I've talked a little bit long, but bear with me. The thing that is quintessential about Steve that I've come to is he is an individual who is unwilling to sell his soul. And to me, that is profound, especially in the world that we find ourselves. He's virtuous, he's ethical, he is indeed a sage commander, he's honorable, principled, with real integrity. If I were ever to offend this fine gentleman in any way, I would surely have a very difficult time forgiving myself. With all that being said, I welcome my brother, my dear brother, Steve Fastabend. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm humbled. Too much. A pleasure to be here. It's so interesting. I'm going to springboard on what you said about love and passion. It is, it is at the core of what we strive to consciously or unconsciously when we engage with clients. The whole paradigm of relationship and change and people opening up to different practices, methods, points of view. It's all based on this relationship, and the stronger the relationship, the greater the impact, 100% of the time. So we all live in a world that we once long ago, I thought technology was the challenge. It may or may not have been true. Today, the ability to do things with technology is merely an artifact. What you want to do, how you do it, how you motivate people, organizing around a common goal, creating harmony, imbibing passion in people to just do the right thing is, that's a challenge that is way beyond, am I going to use C# or some other language?
Very well said.
Yeah. So, and Sai, you did a fine job. My introduction from myself, you know, been around a long time, have a technical background, engineer at one time, but long about 1998 and 99, I had a very, very challenging problem with the company I was at. Went to a seminar that Sai was presenting at, and as you can see, I have the same barber. We're both wearing polo shirts. We're about the same height. We finished that presentation, and I walked up to Sai and had a conversation. And the three colleagues that I was with, we turned around and walked away. And one of them said to me, "What we just saw was another Steve." And it just blew me away. And it, in fact, that relationship, it has very much come to fruition. Sai is my brother and has my love and respect beyond all.
Very kind. You're far too kind. Far too kind. My good friend. So tell us, what's the art of war, the Sun Tzu, if you will, mean to you, and help us see it through your lens.
Yeah. So a lot of thought about that question, right? What is the art of war? Let's answer that question. I'm going to attempt to answer the question without using art of war or any of the jargon associated with it. I think we earn the right to use certain words in certain context, because what I say about what is a retrospective is only important to people that truly understand it. So if we go to describe art of war, we have to think in more generic terms to really explore it in a common language. So to me, it is certainly a paradigm. It's a different context to not exercise or not practice, but to truly live in, right? We adopt these values and we adopt a way of thinking, and then furthermore, acting on that thought and getting to behavior. So it becomes this way of being. The art of war represents a way of being, a change in very much a personality. What is it based on? Not on traditional command and control. We have to get this done. You're going to do that. It really, the art of war is we're thinking about what are the nature of the things around us. How do we maximize the output, the value that we can derive? And you know what? Sometimes that value is work product. Sometimes that value, the higher level, the greater good, is the value in how we improve people. A successful day for me is when somebody on my team walks out of the building feeling like they have a better life because of their work experience. We should all yearn for this, and it's that doesn't happen by accident, and the art of war becomes a toolbox for practices and things that we can do, behaviors that we can use to really maximize the world around us.
Beautiful. And I love the word yearn exactly as you used it, Steve. Help us understand how you kind of arrived at this wisdom, if you will, and kind of how that plays into your past and what have you, Steve, please.
Well, I would start with, in the past 25 years, I haven't been at a single client, but I haven't said, when I was a child, my mother told me this, or when I was in high school, I had this experience. So we are the sum of our experiences. And one of the things that this paradigm has taught me is that everything is a learning opportunity. There's these things that are going on around us that we do or do not understand at the time. But as we begin to reveal the consequences of decisions and actions, we can take the opportunity to inspect our own lives, our own behavior, our own this paradigm. What is the nature of psi? What is the nature of any leader in an organization? When we start to understand that, now we've got something. So it is really a sum of experiences. And if I go to the next client and don't change my behavior, improve because of my last client, then I've made a tremendous mistake.
Very well said, Steve. And I know, we talk about, and exactly as you said, we don't use the language per se, but the word war is in the title. And definitively, any thoughts on kind of how people respond to it, react to it, and your perspective relative to it?
Well, there's a wide spectrum, and you can almost, I think there's a gauge, right? There's some kind of a measurement. In my mind's eye, I have this measurement. If I say art of war and I get a very contemplative look and the response, it says, oh, he's going to talk about something that is a different paradigm, or is, if I say art of war and someone says, their reaction is, oh, this is violence. They're just at a different spot. And it just means that the approach, the care, the nurturing, the shaping, the learning and exchange, all are adapted to, of course, where we're at.
So definitively, the context is so crucial, as the manuscript will say, the environment and what have you. And we talk about taking hold, we talk about the sage commander, we talk about victory. All these words come into play. I would love for you to kind of help us learn from some of your experiences. There are stories that you can share, kind of how you've leveraged this wisdom, where it's been challenging, where it's benefited. Sort of stories for us to dig into, my good friend.
Yeah. So let's see. One that I just love, a client that I worked with, C-suite person, intellectually absolutely gifted, one of the the smartest people I've met, a memory that is unbelievable, and almost always right. I went to his organization, and lots to do, a lot of chaos in the organization. I would say overall, if you ask me what it was like when I walked in, it was a very demoralized workforce. So it took me, it takes time, right? Permanent change. You can do all kinds of things quickly. We can make changes more quickly than humans can adapt to it, for sure, right? But as I began to understand the environment and understand him, I kind of diagnosed, right? You look at the model of human interaction, the culture of the organization, and what can we do to take hold, to make things better. And as I learned, I had a conversation with him, and I said, John, not his real name, but I said, John, what kind of a leader do you want to be? You have great authority, and you can use that authority, or you can use respect. Very simply, where do you want to go with this? I had been there long enough that I earned the right to ask that question. His answer was, I don't know. Let me get back to you. About a week later, he said, well, I think I want to explore respect, but what happens if? And then we had deep conversations about his adapting his style to enable art of war, right? How do we survey and assess all the things around us, all the people and the tools that we have to maximize the value? So we began to explore that. And 6 years ago, and I still regularly get emails from him, and it was a wonderful journey.
Very nice. Steve, would you say as you had those conversations, and based on the question that you asked and what have you, you began to introduce the lens of the art of war in looking at the landscape, looking at the options, looking at what the strengths, what the weaknesses, how he was behaving in that environment, and how he relates to the troops, if we use the language and those things.
Yeah.
Is that sort of what began to happen?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And even that I have a discomfort with Sage Commander, because like the art of war is not as much about fighting as it is about many, many other great things. Sage Commander is not about commanding. My experience with John would have been dramatically different. I could tell you a month in that he was very much in a command and control paradigm, but telling him that, you know what, at that point, I'm just another hourly employee that's complaining. And that's not what I want to be. That's not what we should strive for. We want to be catalysts. We want to change organizations. We want to make life better for people. And it secondarily has to do with work.
Very well said. And this takes us really back to where you started in the conversation. We live into this. By living into this, it becomes just as an exemplar, an invitation for others potentially to begin to live into it.
Yeah, I like your example. Your word exemplar. I'm going to springboard on that a little bit. My own technical background is in data structures and things like that, as you know, right? As I came through the ranks and learned different things, I got a handle on metadata, and it's just this beautiful paradigm for, if I want to change the nature of the thing, then I start thinking about, in a very technical sense, the metadata. What is the nature of this, and how does this item relate to that? And we can manipulate, right, in any complex data set, we can manipulate this metadata model and change the nature of the thing. And that has been a it's always been in my back pocket mentally. I always take that out and think, if I have this technical paradigm where I change the nature of something to get a different result, how does that relate to an organization? And if we change an approach, if we change the nature of something, if we're more clear about driving towards I mean, the value of a shared purpose is enormous, right? And really, that's a metadata thing, right? It's not telling people what to do. It's setting a goal and letting them organize around it, which is far more permanent. I mean, the payback is enormous, of course.
Very well said. And if I translate kind of just the language of data and metadata to kind of the organizational life, we could look at data as the behavior that manifests, and metadata being the values that drive those behaviors in some context.
Yeah, absolutely. You taught. So Sai and I joke. So, Sai is my coach, and I am Sai's coach, and we're each equally uncomfortable with both, and comfortable, by the way. But that model is certainly ongoing and flexible, and it's what I learned from Sai very, very, very early in our relationship. Words he never said, but by example, is these values, right? If I get out of bed and go to work in the morning, and I come home at night, and I'm the same Steve at home as I am at work, as I am at play with my friends, if my decision-making process and the exercise of my values is totally consistent, if my personality is transparent, if you don't know whether I'm Steve at work or Steve at home or Steve at play, so it's tremendously powerful. So we think about art of war and values and process and decision making, and how do I, in the kindest sense of the word, right? We manipulate things, and I don't mean in a naughty way, right? We change things to get certain results. If that's totally consistent, well, first of all, I'm a happy person, right? There's no conflict within me. My conflict begins to go away. Secondly, we exude these things, we set this example, and conflict goes away for others, right? You know, wow, how wonderful would it be if someone could look at you and say, Sai, what you taught me about solving this problem in this organization has made my life better with my children. That's all we have to do is have that happen 2 or 3 times in one's life, and you've had a great success.
Beautifully said. And you've really heightened our awareness to one of the key aspects of the Sage Commander is they have to be whole. There's no perfect wholeness, but as whole as possible in order to manifest in the world. And it's experienced by others. It truly is experienced as you're describing.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, to me, right, everyone is different, and my problems aren't anyone else's, they're mine. I own them. But one of the big challenges with the Sage Commander role, right, there always is one. If I am the Sage Commander, I'm always looking for my replacement. But there's 2 things about it to me. Number one is only 100% of the time are you on display. You are setting an example, and sometimes that example is by what you say or don't say. It's when you show up for a meeting. It's a frown. It's expectations. That you are on stage 100% of the time. I go home from work tired, emotionally drained at times, because not because I can't be me, because I have to be my best me. The second thing is that it is it's lonely, right? There's one sage commander. I think when we go to you know this, when you and I go to organizations, we look for that heir apparent. Who is the person that will carry on? And they come from a variety of places. It's not about education. It's not about degrees. It's not about technology. It's here. It's deep inside. You look for that person. Yet, at the same time, the burden of doing it alone is very real. It's not for the faint of heart. Now, I don't say that to complain, because it is also the most rewarding experience I've ever had at work. Is being able to look at an organization and say, we did this.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Steve. How about other stories, my friend, that you can share with us that we can explore and learn from?
Yeah, so very much along art of war kind of thinking. I was at an organization and I had a chief operating officer there. I was there, led a team with 4 other consultants. The chief operating officer, we called him the chief manipulation officer. CMO, unofficial title, of course. His practice was to truly, in a naughty way, in a very bad way, manipulate. He would try to guess what people would do and set unhealthy traps for them. So his very just a very unhealthy model, a very very unhealthy outlook on life, a very sad person, quite honestly. You could see it in his face. You could look at his health and know that this was a poor match for a chief operating officer. So had weekly meetings with him, and I went in one morning and he said, well, I know exactly what you're going to do. Well, that's interesting. John, again, different John. But that's interesting. How do you know that? He said, well, I know the type of person that you are. And I said, well, you don't. He said, I don't, but I do. He pulled out a chart and he had this chart with all these different character types. And he said, you're right here. And I said, well, I'm right here with you today because that's where I need to be with you to have this conversation. I will get up and walk out of this room and go to a product owner meeting and have a different archetype because that's what I need to be. So this sense of in art of war, right? The water flows, rocks are stationary. If we understand those things around us and we truly can regulate our behavior, responses, our own leadership, our own subserviency, which is saying yes and taking an order, is as prideful and valuable as giving one. So if we look at that and can truly assess this environment and adapt to it, that my friend is a sage commander that I long to be. I wish I could be better at that.
Steve, I love the way you're describing, because the environment around us is alive and we are in relation to it and we're working with it and we're navigating it. There's many words we can apply to it. I want to ask a pointed question relative to what you have. I think if you have a comment, please chime in before I ask.
Go, please.
So many of us, let's say, really are keen on honing that skill, right? Really keen on advice, guidance, wisdom relative to how do I best hone that skill of how to work with the environment, how to read the environment, and etc.
Well, this is going to go full circle a little bit, right? I'm going to go back and I said at the beginning, I always use things that my mother told me with every client. Something will come up So how do you hone that is that we are all, I mean, the very best thing I can be is a lifelong learner. I'm a student. And if I can gain the awareness to understand that when I interact with this situation in this way, I cause a certain outcome.
Mhm.
And if I do it a different way, I could, the outcome obviously changes. And that is that ability to observe and self-adapt. That to me is absolutely essential. It's Boyd and the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. If we can apply that with the most wonderful, I mean, it truly, getting to work with smart people that organize around a goal is the most wonderful. No disrespect to people, but it's the most wonderful erector set, the most wonderful toy box that we could have, because it's human. We're changing people. We're driving to these great outcomes, and it's different every single day. But the ability to say, when I behave this way, then this outcome happens. Another example: I was at a client and uh, executive meeting, and somebody looked at me and said, I was standing in the back of the room. I'll often choose to stand because posture and spacing, and you earn a seat at the table. I was an observer, not a participant. But I was standing, and one of the executives, Steve, what's wrong? I said, well, nothing is wrong. Oh, but you looked at me this way. It called me out for some posture and nonverbal interaction. So just because we're human, right? We're programmed for this interaction and this interplay between each other. We always have that, and that is, how does the song put it? Is it a blessing or is it a curse? Right? It is, and it truly is both for the sage commander. How we harness that is that becomes the critical thing. So I can have gentle guidance, or I can be harsh, and only what's needed.
Beautiful. And Steve, you're highlighting something which is very crucial, and I'd love for you to share with us what you're thinking when I kind of sort of paint it this way. We talk about taking whole, maintaining, sustaining, cultivating as much integrity as possible on which to build, taking whole. But what I hear you almost saying is we need to make ourselves as whole as possible in order to operate as sages in the world. Integrity is the word that comes to mind.
Oh, as you're fond of saying, right? Humans are the most dangerous creatures there are. Think about for a moment someone you know, someone that you have a relationship with, and not even necessarily a deep relationship, but you can tell when they're happy, when they're sad. You can tell when something is wrong. You and I have been the Starbucks encounters that we have, right? You can tell, we can tell about each other through this wide variety of verbal and nonverbal cues and everything else. Part of taking whole is understanding that. It's like I can't communicate with you. I can't have a interaction with a positive outcome unless I'm willing to endorse that. I mean, fully step into that relationships with people. I'm not sure I'm on the right track. I may have diverted a little bit, but it is taking whole is internal and external.
Yeah, not at all diverted, because there is an interplay between pushing and pulling. And I mean, one of the reasons that, and I think you would say the same thing, one of the reasons we have such a fondness with each other is we do push each other and we do pull each other and we challenge each other to the extent where I've been brought to tears at times, rightly so. I'll put it that way. But that's a dynamic.
Well, and it is. I mean, we see that in organizations, right? You've heard this. I know that you've heard it. We've shared it. It's someone will say you're not like every other consultant that's been here, and it's certainly true, right? That the emotional investment is there. It's also again operating in threes. Three is a magic number. We interact. I oftentimes will be coaching, and I'll spend half an hour thinking about the implications of a 15-minute conversation because I go in with a set of art of war kind of thinking. I go in with a set of tools. I have an understanding of the environment around me. Is this a tree or water or rock or whatever that is, right? I go in with the understanding of that paradigm. And if I go in with the goal that says, I must get Psi to do this, it's a failure, quite frankly, right? I'm not taking whole. I shouldn't. Yeah. I shouldn't make people do things. I can make people do things, right? That's a possibility. If we start to think about options and say, oh, I have three ways to go here. I have three levels of escalation. I have things to think about and interact with as we explore this conversation together. It's the difference between coaching and showing up on the job.
Yeah. Steve, you're referencing, and I definitely want to ask for more stories, but I want to highlight awareness to this is there. A lot of people will use these elements from the toolbox exactly as you're describing, but the sage does not impose their will on the world, and that's a very distinct line of using these tools and what have you, and the imposition of will.
Yeah. My friend, my good friend, you told me once when I was at a very troubling client, it's not your job to make them as good as they could be. It's to make them as good as they choose to be. Now, with that comes an awesome responsibility, because if you are behaving as a sage and you understand the potential, I consider it an ethical responsibility. Absolutely. I would lose sleep at night. I consider it an ethical responsibility to set the table, to lay it out and say, here's your potential. If you want to do it, I'll help you go there. And if you don't want to do it, you know what? Good enough is good enough. And if it's good enough for you, I can't make you more than you choose to be. And that's I've been disappointed. I've been emotionally hurt at times, but at the end of the day, we have to understand the nature of the thing, and maybe it's not mine. Maybe I don't own everything.
Steve, I love how you're describing it, because we're respecting the nature, and there is, in the moment and in the journey that you're taking with them, there is a disassociation. They need to own it. Exactly what you're saying. They gotta run with it. They will go as far as they want to go with it. There's a degree of disassociation, but it's because we're human, it still hurts us exactly and disappoints us. Yeah. And we live with it forever. As I like to say, we give birth to demons and we carry them with them in many ways.
we do. And it's I know that you have done it. I've certainly done it. You go to a client, and because we're humans, because what we do right? If a sage commander goes to an organization, if we understand that interaction and the toolbox, the assessment of things is deeply personal. It is deep rooted in relationships, right? We drive towards this super high level of trust. Um, we expose ourselves, and sometimes that hurts, but um, it's part of the game, right? Um, my responsibility is to let clients know what their potential is and help them get there. If they choose not to do it, then I know you have done it. I have probably told more clients that they don't need me anymore. But in fact, I have I probably have a record somewhere of how many clients that I chose to leave before the end of a statement of work because they didn't need me anymore. Um, and from I understand P&L statements and billings and profit and everything else, and it doesn't matter. From an ethical perspective, we're here to create value. Art of war, if it is, I say this rhetorically, if art of war is in fact about taking whole, about leaving the world a better place, and I mean that as literally as you can apply it, then we also have to be able to say, you don't need me anymore. And that's not a measure of failure. If you only look at the billings report, then yes, oh gee, you have $10,000 more to bill. It's like, I don't care. I'll do the right thing. They don't need me anymore. They shouldn't pay me another dime. And it's why we still get emails from clients from 10 years ago and more.
And you've highlighted, excuse me, and emphasized exactly where, again, all my dwelling led me, is the unwillingness to sell the soul is a profound thought, let alone to live it is crucial. And you've just, again, thank you for sharing those. Exactly.
I don't know whether you know this or not. So I developed the practice over the years of telling clients two things on day one. Number one is I'm here to help you with something, and I'm going to leave. If you think of me as a contractor or somebody that's going to do some work for a number of hours, and that's completely wrong, right? I'm here to get something done, and I'm going to leave. I would like two things. I would like to leave you with the feeling that I've done something good, and the desire to invite me back should you ever need me again. And to me, right, you at the start, you set the gold standard for the relationship. I don't want to only fix your problem. I want to have a relationship for life.
Yeah. Steve, the thing that I always am observant of, I'll say, with yourself, with Mark Ferraro, with Brad Barton, with that circle of folks that we're both well aware of, is the ego is you have to have enough ego to maintain integrity of yourself, but there isn't ego that manifests that is intrusive in such a way that it becomes harmful and negative and what have you. So this words of wisdom, my good man, words of can I say?
I had a client. I'm assuming lots of people know this, but it really is stuck with me. I had a client, and one of the ground rules with the leadership team was when you're in a meeting, there's no hippos. Like, hippo? What's a hippo? Highest paid person's opinion. And I think this goes to art of war and taking whole, right? If we want to take whole, if we really want to build this organization and maximize capability, then it's not the highest paid person's opinion that matters. It's to the best outcome that we can achieve. So it very, very much is around how do we maximize satisfaction, job reward, contribution, success, happiness. And it's no hippo is just always stuck with me because everyone's opinion counts. They're not all right, but if we're to really build healthy organizations, then it has to count. And if it's wrong, great. Let's help each other learn from our mistakes. And if it's right, let's gather around the best solution, and we can do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before. The gentleman, I'm drawing a blank on the name. Headed up Skunk Works. So SR-71 Blackbird, aviation pioneer, right? One of his favorite quotes was, "It's amazing what you can accomplish when you get a bunch of people in the room and nobody cares who gets credit."
Yeah.
Right? And the corollary to that is blame. And again, the sage commander, we recognize things for what they are. We orchestrate the right conversations, the right interactions, and get people to maximize value. And you know what? Blame and credit, two sides of the same coin. And when we start thinking about our goals and our outcomes, right? The general wants to win, right? And winning is it's a team effort, right? I never win. We win.
Yeah. Yeah. Victory transcends the specific individuals. Exactly. It's so powerful. Steve, any other stories? I know we're pushing time, but any other stories to share, my friend, or should we move to other sort of questions?
Move down the list. I'll bore these people with my stories.
So I really want folks to kind of hear, any sort of perspective. Actually, let me ask a different question before I go back to what I was going to ask. Underneath everything you've shared, there's an element of sheer or energy that's at play, and how that manifests in the environment, how you work with energy, etc. Anything to mention relative to working with energy in the context and exactly some of the stories that you've mentioned?
Yeah. So yeah. Here's something I would share about that. It's as coaches, consultants, we go into all kinds of environments and we can sense caustic environments and whatnot. And establish a beachhead, right? Define a space. And you know what? I've told lots of clients, if your space is this big and it only contains you, be you. You control that. And then let that energy, let that start to seep out. And the ultimate is how you get more people into the space. So that's harnessing your personal energy. And I can't control yours. I can invite you into mine and we can have something. And it really, in some ways, it's some of the most taxing things that we do, right? You find your biggest detractor and make them your ally. Mm-hmm. It's not easy, but it is. Your energy doesn't just magically rub off. It is, again, it's a tool. It is how I interact and observe, and the nature of what I'm dealing with is the way I expand that field of influence, I'll call it, instead of just pure energy. It's a field of influence. Very, very positive influence.
Yeah, and definitively expansive and fluid and alive in so many ways, if you will. So Steve, I want the questions that I go back to the questions that I have in mind. If you will, I would love to hear your thoughts on, and I'll mention two concepts because I definitely want to make sure that you get enough time to offer some closing comments. But anything to share around taking whole and the Sage Commander, how you relate to them, how we see them, how we work with them. Again, kind of taking from your experience.
Yeah. Well, I think if it's super valuable to kind of go back and remember taking whole was a foreign concept to me at one time, right? There were winners and losers. I was better than you, or you were better than me, right? Taking whole was a foreign concept. It really is, probably gets overused. I hesitate to say it. It's a way of being. It's a paradigm that we live in. There's no, my friend Sai has said, there's no win-lose. You can't win and I lose, and I win and you lose. These don't exist. We either lose together or win together. So that very much taking whole. And we need to get up every morning. We need to face every client and every problem with the idea that we can win. We can make the best of the situation that we have. The other thing I would say is just normal bell curve behavior of organizational adoption of new concepts and technology. And we see this, right? It's almost a physics experiment to see how things get adopted. The hardest thing to me is working with organizations that don't take whole, that won't do it. I mentioned the very best thing about being a Sage Commander, kind of that, and I say that very humbly. I'm not sure I am one yet. But the best thing is that impact that you have on people's being. The worst thing is interacting with an organization that refuses, right? They've seen what should be done. They know a better way. It's been demonstrated to them. And the answer has been, no, Steve, we're not doing that. And that's when you say, for my own health, for my own mental well-being, for my reputation, for my professionalism, I can't work with you. That's hard. That's not, and again, boy, that's got a lot less to do with how many hours I bill or what my rate is. It's got to do with, I look deep inside, very deep, and say, what have I done to fail? Because that's on me to a certain extent, right? If you hire a bad employee, if you have an employee that gets fired, there's two people responsible. The employee that did something wrong and the person that hired him. If I'm a coach and I go to an organization and can't change them, I own that. And that is, to me, that's hard. That's the hardest part. I can go in a cocoon over that.
Beautifully said. Steve, if you're good, just kind of respecting your time and what have you, closing thoughts, my good friend, things to leave us with.
Yeah, you and I talked, and I think this is a great opportunity. Here's my closing thought. I got a bunch of books behind me. I obviously an avid reader, and we watch things in the business world. We watch management models and delivery systems and technology, and all kinds of things change. Yet I fear that for as much talk and hand waving and oh my goodness, you and I have lived through a lot. It's been, oh, you're going to be a successful organization if you have a good vision. It's like, oh, what are your values? And I think it was Mark Ferraro we were talking about values, and he said, oh, the values on the wall are the values that the organization does not have. because if they had them, they wouldn't have to write them down, right? So for all of that, for everything that's happened, I think there's no better time to think about art of war. And the reason why is there's this cosmic, I mean, to me, truly cosmic alignment of pressures on the business world, technology, AI, social workforce changes, generational changes. The old models are simply crumbling. They're just crumbling. I mean, read the news, right? People won't go to work. I don't feel like doing this, so I'm not going to work. Or I want to work a 20-hour-a-week job. Don't care, right? All of these things. And I'm not saying anything is wrong or right. They're all, again, look at the environment. It's real. And the time for change has never been true, lasting change in how we approach leadership. I don't think there's ever been a larger opportunity. Maybe the dawn of the industrial age, but this is to me, I look at this and say, oh, this is the fruition of the computer age. We're scratching the surface of AI. We're dealing with people that don't behave the way they did 10 years ago, and we better figure out new ways to do it. And I think art of war is absolutely key. It should be mandatory study only for any leader that wants to be successful.
So truly as relevant today as it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, maybe more so, right? Because you used to be able to think about our fathers, right? You used to be able to get away with telling people what to do, and I think that time is gone. You used to be able to get away with unmotivated employees. Yeah. That's certainly gone, and we better be figuring out ways to maximize value, because as you have said, right, unrealized potential is the greatest waste that there is. Art of war is the greatest approach to maximizing that.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said, my friend. Beautifully said. Anything else before we close out, my good man?
I know. I think you've probably heard more than enough from me.
all good things. All good things. So definitively, the interesting thing is, I really again was looking forward to this conversation. Wanted to make sure that people got a chance to hear and experience you as best as possible with the technology. Just a few things I would love for people to keep in mind. As Steve has talked about, it is a journey. The Sage Commander isn't a Sage Commander. It's an evolutionary journey that is ongoing, exactly as you've mentioned, Steve. I think that's very, very powerful. There's a key, I like to call them the 3 I's, if you will. There's a key characteristics that's very observable through the stories. And honestly, I think we look for this in other sages as we talk about this. And the 3 I's are the following. First, there is intent. There is definitive intent of what the Sage Commander operates with. And that intent is very powerful. It's not simply judge a person by their actions, as one might say. The intent is overarching. The 2 I's that hopefully people really grab from what you've shared, Steve, and I hear it every time we talk or every time we share things, the ability to intuit from the experience that you're in is very, very powerful. And then the ability to improvise from the experience. So I look at those 3 I's are core, amongst other things, if you will, the creativity, the curiosity. But those 3 I's are so crucial for the Sage Commander to be able to intuit, operate with that relevant intent, and improvise in order to advance toward taking home a victory. That's my last word, but please, Matt, my good friend, if you have thoughts relative to that, please do share, because I definitely want to make sure that people really hear you.
Very, very well done. Well said. It is, again, the art of war, the practices, the values is the greatest. It's a great, great toolbox. We only need to learn how to use it, and I'm working on it.
Likewise, my good man. So thank you, Steve, my dear, dear brother. I look forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steve. And we thank our guests for joining us, and we look forward to future conversations. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.